What's up, guys? This is TheKephas. You know, if you were to go to my channel page and look through my video history, you would find a lot of videos of me leveling up characters in World of Warcraft. It's one of my favorite things to do, and ever since my return to the game, after a fairly long hiatus for the past couple of months, it's practically all I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of leveling in both Retail, WoW, and in Classic, and the main reason why is because both versions of the game were given a temporary buff which increases experience gains by 50%. In Retail, this was called Winds of Wisdom. It's actually coming back here soon, or by the time this video comes out it might even be back already. And then the other one in Classic is called Joyous Journeys. So my return to WoW couldn't have come at a better time because I have had a ton of fun leveling up new characters. But what I found interesting about these buffs is how the community reacted to them in both versions of the game. In both instances, when the buffs were added, people got really hyped, and there were a lot of players now motivated to level up new characters. And likewise, when the buffs went away, that motivation was gone, and in both instances of the game, players were asking Blizzard to keep the buffs around a little bit longer, or in the case of Classic, a lot of players even asked for the buff to remain permanently. Here's the thing though, there is a massive difference in how much time it takes to level up in Classic versus Retail. In Classic, I would say it would take the average player around 60 to 80 hours of game time to level up a character. In Retail, it would probably take the average player about 20 to 24 hours of game time. That is a massive difference. Now obviously there are people that can level up much faster in both instances, but even then there's still going to be a huge disparity. So, you know, there might be some people that look at a Classic player who is asking Blizzard to keep Joyous Journeys around, and you might feel the need to criticize them. Hey, I thought a big part of why you wanted Classic was for that long journey leveling experience, the old Classic style of leveling that takes 10 years. Isn't that a big part of why you wanted Classic? Is this a case of you think you do but you don't? Well, I don't think so. Because in Retail, leveling is significantly faster than in Classic, and even then, people who play Retail were also wanting to keep their buff around. So the obvious question is, why would people want to keep this buff around? Why do people want the leveling experience to be faster? And I think there's also an obvious answer to this, which will likely apply to a portion of the player base. And that is simply, some people don't like leveling. They want max level characters, they just don't enjoy the process that goes in to making those max level characters happen. But I don't think this mindset applies to everybody. I think there's a less obvious answer that applies to people like me who actually enjoys the leveling experience and still loved having those faster leveling buffs. I think it boils down to something in our psychology. Like, no matter how fast you're going, it always feels good to go faster. I mean, people don't speedrun games because they hate the game. They do it because it feels good to be as efficient as possible. So just because people enjoy doing something faster doesn't mean they don't enjoy what they're doing. It's just that it's more rewarding to do it even faster. I mean, I did the exact same thing in Final Fantasy XIV when I created my character on a preferred world and I had the Road to 80 buff. I was leveling up my main job and any other job as much as I could before that buff went away. Even though I love leveling up in that game, just like I do in WoW. I will say though that when it comes to leveling up in video games, there are a lot of times where, especially in the case of an MMO, that process can become very, very repetitive and very grindy. So even people who might enjoy it may still experience a fair bit of burnout from time to time. And that's where, when these buffs come in, it can significantly revitalize that enjoyment. But at the same time, I don't think that speed alone is the answer to make leveling more enjoyable. I mean, you look at Retail, again, it's significantly faster than in Classic, and people still wanted the faster leveling buff to stick around. Now this is just my personal opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, but I actually prefer leveling up in Classic over Retail. I like that longer journey, and I feel like the leveling process is a game in and of itself. In spite of that though, I felt like the pacing was much better with Joyous Journeys. I didn't feel like it made leveling too fast, but at the same time, it prevented me from hitting those dry spots that are familiar with classic WoW. You know, those bits where you run out of quests to do and you have to do some grinding or something else to get to a place where you can do some new quests in a different area. That happens a lot without the buff, and that didn't happen at all when I had Joyous Journeys. So I personally do agree with people that want to keep Joyous Journeys around, only because I genuinely do feel like it would make leveling in Classic much more enjoyable without making it too fast. The funny thing is that while I feel like Classic can be a little too grindy at times with those dry spots, I feel like Retail has the exact opposite problem. When I level up in Retail, it's so fast and frankly so mentally uninvolved that by the end of it, it doesn't feel very rewarding. It almost feels like a pointless formality, which ironically makes the buff even more appealing because I can just get through it that much faster. And I think that's the mindset of a lot of people when it comes to leveling up in Retail WoW. People are very focused on the end game experience and they just want to get through the leveling process as quickly as possible, so they welcome the leveling speed. Now, I'm sure that there are plenty of people that enjoy the leveling experience in Retail as it is. I mean, there's a lot of cool things about it. You've got the Chromie Time experience where you can pick through different expansions, level through different zones and experience those storylines, run some dungeons, and hey, in Dragonflight, they're even bringing back a old style talent tree to make the leveling process even more interesting. And I think all those changes are great. But I'm sure there are a lot of people that play Retail and just kind of wish you didn't have to level up at all. Like, just get me to the good stuff, the end game, the thing that I'm here for. And I can kind of appreciate that mindset, but I have to respectfully disagree with it. See, I feel like leveling is an integral part to the experience of an RPG. And if done well, I think that it can be just as enjoyable as endgame. And I do think that pacing is part of that. You know, if you make it too slow, it's going to feel grindy. But if you make it too fast, it's going to feel pointless. To me, go too far one way or the other, and it's going to make the process feel mundane and less enjoyable. But I think that there's a lot more to it than pace, and I feel like you can improve a game's leveling experience by answering two questions. What are we doing, and what are we getting? What are we doing is asking about the task, the thing that we will have to do to level up our character. In the case of World of Warcraft, I feel like this can be answered with a meme that a lot of WoW players are familiar with. Collect 10 bear asses. Now, I don't recall ever actually having to collect 10 bear asses, but you know what? I've done a lot of quests, and it does kind of sum up the questing experience in WoW. And to be fair, I don't really think of that as a bad thing. I don't think that questing in WoW itself is a problem. In fact, I do enjoy it a lot of times. I think that you can tell a lot of cool storylines through quests, and I feel like questing itself can be a fun sort of casual experience that you can kind of have in the game when you're leveling up your character, and it can do a really good job at taking you through the world. The problem is that even though the game has been around for a long time, we've had several expansions adding in new content, and we've even been through a world revamp, we've always had to quest to level up our character. It's always been built around doing that one thing, though you can break up the monotony by running dungeons, and that it does give you another option when leveling up your character. But even then, that's still only two main options for leveling up. I mean, yeah, you can run battlegrounds to gain some experience, and in Retail you can farm resources and that'll also give you experience, but if you ask the question, what are we doing when it comes to leveling in World of Warcraft, the answer is questing or running dungeons. And I think this is the main reason why people feel the same about leveling in Classic and in Retail, even though Retail is significantly faster. See, I feel that if there were more answers to that question, then it would make the leveling experience much more enjoyable. In other words, it would be great if there were more things that you could do to level up your character. For instance, if you were to ask the same question of Final Fantasy XIV about leveling, what are we doing? Well, you do have the main story quests. There are also dungeons, which you can run with other players or NPCs. You also have daily roulettes, a weekly challenge log, the hunting log, leave quests, fates, Palace of the Dead, Heaven on High, Baja, Beast Tribe quests, and a few other things that you can do to level up. Having so many options for leveling up made it a lot more enjoyable for me and made it feel much less grindy. So I think that adding more variety goes a long way into making the leveling experience more enjoyable. And looking back at WoW, I think that there is a lot of opportunity already to add in more options when you're leveling up. Take the invasions from Legion and BFA. I felt like they brought a lot of excitement to leveling. They gave a lot of XP and they made the zones feel a lot more active. Now, if you level in those zones, you can still experience invasions, but imagine if that system could be expanded upon. Imagine if every zone could have random events specific to that zone's lore. Maybe there will be a TheKephas Brotherhood raid on Sentinel Hill, or maybe a giant shark is attacking Booty Bay. Adding in random events like this is a tried and true method in a lot of other games and is almost always well received. But WoW has even more options at its disposal. There are a number of systems that have essentially been shelved or forgotten about, and if repurposed, could add more options for leveling. Torghast, for example, could absolutely be repurposed into a deep dungeon leveling experience, kind of like the Palace of the Dead in Final Fantasy XIV. It should obviously continue to give the rewards that it's always given so that nothing is lost, but it could also be a great source of experience for people leveling up new characters. The exact same thing could be done for island expeditions. I feel like if these systems were expanded upon, made available much sooner in the leveling process, and offered a reasonable amount of experience, they could be a great option to switch to when you're tired of running dungeons or doing quests. And likewise, if you get tired of running these, you could go back to running dungeons and doing quests. That's the idea of having more variety. It allows you to break up the monotony of whatever it is you're doing so that you don't get too burnt out. So if you're wanting to improve the leveling experience and you ask the question, what are we doing? I feel like it's best to have more than one or two answers. But this still leaves us with our second question, and if what are we doing refers to our task, then what are we getting refers to our reward. And of course, the answer is obviously experience, because that's what leveling is all about. You do a thing, you gain experience, and you level up. Now, obviously there are other rewards, like sometimes you'll get gear that is better than what you have, or you'll earn gold or reputation for whatever faction you're doing your task for. And to be fair, these things can go a long way into making the task seem more appealing. For example, in Classic WoW, where gear is much more valuable, players will go out of their way to do a certain quest if it offers a good piece of gear. The reward is what motivates us as players to do the task, and I think this is what a lot of people get hung up on. I mean, if you don't really like leveling and quests mainly give you experience because there are better ways to make gold, get gear, and earn reputation, then the task itself doesn't seem all that appealing. I mean, sure, your reward for going through the leveling process is that you'll have a max level character, but that doesn't always translate to being a fun, rewarding experience. And I feel like this is especially true for a lot of people when they're leveling up alts. Leveling starts to feel like a repetitive, unrewarding formality, and I think that's why a lot of people grow to resent it. But what if leveling could be more rewarding? The very first thing that comes to my mind are the map completion rewards in Guild Wars 2. This was one of my favorite things about leveling in Guild Wars 2, and it made progressing through that game a lot more fun. It was really cool because it appealed to my completionist tendencies while rewarding me for it. Going back to WoW, how cool would it be if you got a unique reward for completing every story chapter in a zone? It gives you an incentive to actually complete a zone, which is cool if you haven't experienced that zone's story, but at the very least you get a reward. And it gives you another goal to complete while leveling up besides, just leveling up. For me, I always feel more satisfied when I'm playing an MMO and I'm able to work towards multiple goals at the same time. If the game feels more segmented and I'm only working on one thing at a time, I don't feel as rewarded. I always like to go back to Wrath of the Lich King dungeons, where you could wear a tabard to earn reputation for a specific faction for killing enemies in the dungeon, and you could also kill bosses to get gear that might be better than what you have, or at the very least, you could earn badges to buy even better gear later on. I think this is a big part of why I loved endgame rafts so much. I always felt like I could work on multiple goals at once, and that makes the whole experience even more satisfying. Believe it or not, applying this concept to leveling reminds me of late Shadowlands. I'm actually about to say something good about Shadowlands, you guys. Now, I have absolutely no idea how people feel about Threads of Fate, so I might be an island unto myself on this one, but having recently leveled up a character through Threads of Fate, I actually enjoyed myself a lot. And that's because not only was I leveling up my character, but I was also earning renown, which is an end-game system. While I wasn't the biggest fan of the renown system itself, at the same time, it felt great to work towards in-game rewards while leveling up my character. Honestly, Threads of Fate for me was one of the coolest leveling experiences I've had in modern WoW in quite some time. It added a little bit more variety in what you're doing with bonus objectives, world quests, other quests, and you also gained a lot of different rewards. You were leveling up your character, you earned reputation for the zones in the expansion, you earned other rewards like anima, and you were working towards end game rewards like your renown. It offers a bit more variety and even more rewards, and I think it makes leveling alts a lot more fun. Ultimately, I think that leveling up in MMOs can be a very fun experience and doesn't have to feel like a pointless grind. Create more variety and offer players more opportunity to enjoy what they're doing while also feeling more rewarded for what they're doing, and leveling can become a part of the game that is just as enjoyable as the end game. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is TheKephas. Until next time.